Hello and welcome to the Profit Show. I'm Monica Profit and I'm here with Chris Groshong of CoinStructive, or is it CoinStructive?
CoinStructive.
Aha, much better. Thank you, Chris, for joining us. I'm so excited for our talk today about all the things you've been up to since you got into crypto pretty much around the same time as me, just a little bit earlier. Um, it's been quite a bumpy ride, but I guess we can all say that. Where do you
Yeah,
want to start? I mean,
I'm
you're
very,
almost an OG at this point, I guess.
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I got into crypto in 2013 originally. So yes, and I say crypto because it's crypto now, but it was Bitcoin, right? When we got in, there wasn't really anything else. So yeah, that's part of any new industry is taking your lumps and your bumps as you go. So we're uh we're definite. I say we, like as I am me and the company. We're both happy to be here still, like trucking along. Things change, the environment changes, but it's not going anywhere. So as long as you can adapt and be nimble and agile, I think then you have your chances of success increase every time you get through a bear market. And so here we are, hopefully on the precipice of coming out of one. And I'm definitely looking forward to the next bull run for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I'm definitely going to be watching my own charts, not taking anybody else's word for like, oh, we should have another leg up to six figures by now. No, don't listen to that person. It doesn't make sense to you. It can make sense to them. Get out if you want to. But yeah, I mean, they have been some lumps. I think there's more bumps and lumps along the way if you're not just a trader or an investor or something in between, but if you're like an innovator and you're trying to build a business in this space of any way, whether it's education, here on media, and you do mostly compliance and like you kind of hunt out bad guys now, right?
Yeah, so I mean, our business model has changed significantly from when we first started, right? I mean, originally it was merchant adoption and general education, and that didn't go anywhere because crypto's too volatile for merchants initially, right? And nobody wanted to part with their Bitcoin. So that didn't really work. And then I started a Bitcoin ATM company in 2017. I became the chief compliance officer there. That's where I got a lot of my compliance background, and I had some friends in the space who I can leverage. So that felt like there was less risk because I knew some really smart people that I could lean on for advice and how to handle things. So, and then I actually leveraged that and turned that into a business model down the road. And then part of the thing that we were doing in 2018 and 2019 was continuing education for law enforcement, banking compliance professionals, and attorneys.
Wait, so that
And
means you like go into cop shops and you're like, okay, guys, here's how to fight crime in a whole new way.
I mean, I already had some connections to some organizations that I was speaking at, and it was requested, right? Like, hey, if you have a training, I think people would really like this, right? And the organization that I was a part of, well, our meetings comprised half law enforcement, half banking compliance professionals. So it already felt like a really good marriage, right? You got the two people who are dealing with this the most, the financial people and then the law enforcement people, and neither one of them know how to talk to each other, and the victim doesn't know how to explain the situation necessarily correctly, and they're talking past each other, and it gets really hairy, and no one wants. And then what happens is then everybody gives up because they don't know what to do and they don't know how to interpret the information or what processes to take. So it turns out that we were too early. That's one of the innovators or the entrepreneur's dilemma is timing, and you don't always get to choose when your idea comes to fruition,
I like to
and if
tell
the
people that,
market's ready.
yeah, being early is a whole lot, it looks a lot like being wrong. And people are like, ah, that was a bad idea. And you're like, no, actually, it's a great idea. It's just totally the wrong time.
Yeah, sometimes you got to throw it in your back pocket, right? And then sit on it and wait until the time is right, which we're actually looking to relaunch some of our education stuff, um, and targeting specific like demographics. Again, maybe not attorneys, maybe not banking compliance professionals, maybe not law enforcement right away, but definitely very specific targeting. So, but again, that all kind of comes back to like, well, where does this, like, where's the precipice of, like, how did you get to where you are now, right? And like, yes, so the education led us to um, a lot of law enforcement connections and things like that. It also led us to connections with companies that perform blockchain or produce blockchain forensics tools, who wanted law enforcement to see their tools so that they could understand what's going on. So we kind of were almost a liaison for one of the blockchain forensics companies. And so then they had a program where they were bringing in interns essentially, and they had kind of this like intern investigation program, and they were helping people who had been scammed. And I guess they kind of added me into this program, even though I wasn't in college and I wasn't an intern. And they would just I just started getting referrals at the end of 2019. Well,
So
yeah,
what is a
end of
referral like
2019.
that? Yeah, a referral like that. What does that look like? Is it just like someone who's going, I have millions of dollars that is lost and I need help, and like they crawled out of their hovel to be like, hell, I don't know what happened. I got someone found my seed phrase, or what does this look
Yeah,
like?
yeah. I mean, intake when I first started was it was an email introduction, and then we jumped on a Zoom call. They weren't handing me big cases, right? So people maybe lost 10, 20, 50 grand and just did not know what had happened, had no idea what to do. And initially I was like, I don't know why they're even sending me people, because, we were all taught, like, when you send your crypto, it's gone. Like, there's no return button, there's no oops button, there's no give it back, there's not even anybody to call to reverse it. And once you realize that, you're just like, okay, well, it's probably gone, right? But now I have these tools, right? And much easier than using a blockchain explorer only. I get graphical, like, visual representation of the blockchain.
Wait, do
And
you get those infographics that show like this is how the Mount Gox heist worked? It went through Monero and it went over here and then it got tumbled through like Tornado Cash and then it came to these wallets. Now we found those people sitting in Gainesville, Florida, or what? Is that like literally what you?
yeah, yep,
I
yep, that's
love
what we do.
those infographics. I was like, how did someone just sit around in a PowerPoint, like, graphing this whole thing out just for this one LinkedIn post so I can look at a really interesting infographic? And so you actually have tools that just generate this. It's not some intern's like sad life that they have to actually graph that out themselves.
No, you have to graph it out. Like, if for a presentation like that, yeah, you're gonna have to like make it cleaner. Um, but and once you switch blockchains too, you're using different graphs, right? So yes, now we're seeing a lot more smart contract type related scams, DeFi and staking, where people are connecting their wallets and they don't know what they're connecting to,
Yeah.
and then gone, everything's gone. It's just wiped out, because they didn't realize the smart contract is asking for their private key, right? And then everything's gone. And we're kind of in the same place right now with like DeFi and staking and websites related to crypto, as we were when like the app stores first got started, right? Right, because you could go down and download an app. You didn't know what permissions it needed,
Right.
right? So why does your calculator that you just download need your downloads full access to your downloads folder, your camera, and your
Yeah.
microphone? What?
Right.
Right? This is the same thing that we need now for DeFi staking, right? Or DeFi site. So when you go to connect a wallet, it needs to tell you, what is the smart contract going to do, right? So
Yep.
that and you should be able to confirm it somehow without even having to ask permission from the site. But there has to be a way for
To
people to be
audit
able
that, you have to
to
have the
check it.
ability to go, hey, there's a warning on, almost like a McAfee for smart contracts, right? Like before you connect your thing, just scan it for viruses. It's sort of the same thing. I guess that's
Yeah,
what the
scan
consumer
it
will
for
say. Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, I think that's where we need to go next. Or warning, like, this is going to connect to X and this is going to ask for Y. Like, if if there can be some interpretation of the code that can be prompted to the user, they might think twice about connecting to what looks like a, a, a site that they seem
Pickleball
to be
decks or
legit.
something. It's like,
Yeah,
maybe not. Maybe don't do that. Yeah.
yeah, Coinbase dot something, right? Like, it's not Coinbase, like Coinbase dash fx.com. Like that's
Right.
not an actual Coinbase site, right? So, and we're getting more and more, I would say law enforcement is catching up, right? They're getting better about understanding what they need to do and how they can help. There's still what, people say, oh, well, they need more education. They need more education. And I swear that that's not necessarily just that's not the only answer. I think a lot of this has to do with like generation, right? This is a generational problem that people who are on their way out towards retirement do not want to take on something completely new that has never existed before that they don't understand how to do. But you get these younger folks who are like eager, they're green, they don't have tenure, they want to make a name for themselves, and they're willing to put in the time and the energy and the effort to become that person, right? But this takes a generation. We need another 10 years for those older folks to completely leave the system. Same with politics, right? Right. We can't be having 85, 90-year-old people making and passing laws.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. Right. Like I know if I'm 85 years old, I should not be making, like I probably just don't comprehend what I'm even making decisions on. I mean, even if I do, something like this, which is completely new, like maybe an immigration thing, sure, I get it. But even then,
Yeah.
retire
If
already.
you're like making policy decisions between naps, that's I think when we need to cut it off, you know?
Wait, there's nothing wrong with naps, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. You know where you're going, right? Next is gonna be
So,
bridge and then dominoes for you. You realize this.
I hope that's a little farther off.
We all do
Um,
at this age.
um,
So, but I mean, okay,
so,
but if
so
like
yeah,
law enforcement, for example, okay, politics aside, you're not going to be probably you're not going to be too involved in that. Although we do have an interesting story about a kiosk bill, which we'll get back to late. We'll get some to later. But you know, with these organizations that are in charge and they're not really that equipped, and for good reason, for organizational attrition reason, really, like they're going to take some time to mature into being as effective as we need them to be, if ever. I mean, defund the police might get involved in that too. Who knows? But in the meantime, doesn't that just open the door for your outsourced services? And so that they can go, we don't know, but go talk to that guy. And then you're just like, great, I'm a private, I don't know, contractor who's able to fulfill the needs of these people. And it's a private transaction with the consumer or the private entity.
yeah,
And it becomes something that you wouldn't call 911 over your crypto keys getting lost because you don't need a cop, you need a specialist. Wouldn't
yeah.
that
Well,
be
I
nice if that was
hope,
the case for more things? Like, oh, I don't need to call 911 over my, I don't know, like my purse getting stolen. I'm going to call my down the street vigilante group of friends or something. I don't know. It just seems like this whole privatization of security might be really interesting in lots of facets,
well, I mean, there's always been private eyes, right?
right? So you're
And
like
so
basically the
that's,
crypto private eye. Is that your
I
new
am,
website URL? The crypto private eye?
no, that's probably taken. And if not, like someone's on there right now trying to buy it. Um, but that essentially that's what we are, right? And actually what the way I look, because I'm kind of a futurist, and so I like to look out 10, 15, 20 years ahead. And this to me, this is very much like DNA in the 80s. Okay. First off, there hasn't been anybody convicted using blockchain forensics data. Why? Probably because the evidence is so damning that people will just plea, right? Oh, you got me. Like,
Right.
there's all the data. Um,
Oh, that's
right.
undeniable.
But eventually someone's gonna say like, I'm gonna fight this, right? And then that blockchain data is gonna have to be used in a court, right? And so judges need to understand it. The lawyers need to understand it. The law enforcement people need to put the data together eventually, right? But this goes the same thing I said, like the DNA in the 80s. You couldn't get a jury to convict somebody on DNA evidence because the jury didn't know what DNA was,
Right.
right? Same thing we have now. But look how it took us 30 years, right? Before people were like very comfortable with like convicting somebody for DNA, right? Or
Right.
20 years. So And now every police station in every city, pretty much, at least the big cities, they all have DNA labs,
Yep.
right? This is totally not, and 25, 30 years ago, they'd be like, no, they'll have to send it to the state, or like there's going to be this, it'll be too expensive, right? Every costs always come down over time.
Right.
So like the tools will become cheaper and more available. And then I'm hoping that I'll be more out of a job. I will have less investigation work because there'll be more law enforcement people who can actually do the work,
So
right?
that would make sense why you're going to maybe be revamping your education to side of business, because you're like, I'm a futurist. I can see that I won't be the only solution. And but if I can continue leading best practices and educating the entities that are going to incorporate this and make it ingrained in their own culture and in their own organizations, then you're actually helping with that organizational change as well from the inside, right?
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of opportunity to help shape just the industry in general, right? And that's kind of why I've got into this space in the first place was, I mean, I came from biotech and I wasn't a developer. Like, how do you jump from biotech to fintech?
Yeah.
There's not really a correlation there. But I was determined. I saw the future. I saw that this is going to be as big as the internet as far as innovation goes because you can't shut it off. And if you can't shut it off, then it will flourish. And so that's what I was like, okay, this is the future. And I just had to figure out a way to make that jump. Right. So if you were going to go back to school and get a new degree, right, you would spend your weekends and your nights while going to work every day, right? And to like get a new degree or get a master's or work on your PhD. Like you don't just usually quit your job
Yeah.
unless you got a ton of
Well,
money,
unless, I mean,
you know.
I just like steered. I was like, wait a minute, what? Blockchain, once I got it, I was like, I'm selling my company, I'm selling my home, I'm going straight to New York, and I'm going to get involved in this right now. Like that was, I'm not saying that's the right decision for lots of people, but I went like all in so hard. And here
You are,
we
I think you're an anomaly for sure.
are.
Um, right. So so that's basically what I did. I put all my free time into going to events, meeting people, engaging on the internet because that's the only place like Twitter. Like the only reason I really got on Twitter was to talk about Bitcoin and crypto because that's where people were talking about it
I
back
still
in the
don't have
day.
an appetite for Twitter. I'm like, I'm long-winded for starters. Secondly, if it's only a few characters, I just want to write a haiku poem. That's all I want to do. Like, I don't want to use like, and then also I just ever since I guess college, like learning about humanities and social sciences, and Noam Chomsky was like a big influence, and of course, you can imagine with my familiarity with soapboxes, right? So after all that, I was like, nothing good is accomplished in a soundbite. It's too small. We have to have dissertations, so like monologues. So I've been like, it's too brief. And now it's owned by a crazy person. That's just my opinion. But like, I don't know if I want to buy my blue check mark and join I don't know. I've just been
Oh,
more like, if I
I,
want to speak very few words, I'll use a picture. Hello, Instagram.
no, I get it. I get what you're saying, and that's Twitter today. But you think about Twitter 10 years
Okay.
ago,
Yeah.
right? Where like there was like no real community per se. And so like the people you found talking about it on crypto or about Bitcoin online anywhere was like a community and you could have real time chats and you didn't have to connect and I didn't have to join any like groups or anything. It just felt very open and we had so much dialogue directly. And it really got me to build a network. So it's like with anything, like if you're early into something, and we're still early, but small and early, right? Those are two things that you can't always recreate. And so getting those early connections, I think, ended up being really valuable. But okay, so let's go back to let's go back to the investigations a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
I,
Yeah. Yeah.
I do want to talk about because you were mentioning like, well, how does this all happen and what? So I want to give you a case example. I
Yes.
didn't know we didn't talk about this earlier, but I want to give you a case example. Okay, so we worked a case. The victim didn't really understand how it happened initially. Ended up being I think through a business like or a email compromise situation, and then the data of a wallet was in one of like their Google Drives or OneDrive or something that they had taken a picture of and thought they had deleted it everywhere and forgot, and the scammer got in and then found it, right? And they were able to drain the wallet of this person. Well, the wallet moved. This is like they turned everything. It was all a bunch of ERC20 tokens. And then they converted everything to ETH, and then they moved it off the platform, out of the wallet, and they moved it through a couple different wallets, and they started cashing out places. Well, one of the wallets had an NFT in it, and the NFT was an ENS, right? So Ethereum naming service. And the ENS was the N word. So the N word dot ETH. And I was like, wow, this has got to be pretty controversial because anytime anybody uses the N word, like it's just
Yeah.
sometimes it makes news. People lose their job, they get fired. Like, I mean, you can't just throw that around and expect no one to like care, especially when it's an ENS, which means someone had to create it. There was a sale of it on OpenSea, and then there was this movement of the ENS not being sold, but just being moved between different accounts. And like gas from one account where it ended being sent to the original account who bought it so they could continue to send, right? So it just shows that all of those accounts were connected, or those wallets were all connected, right? Well, anyways, the registration for the ENS had a Twitter handle. The Twitter handle is a 2-letter Twitter handle, which means you had to be on Twitter in like the first month or two it started. So now I'm like, okay, so there's this great tool called Internet Archive
Oh
or the
yeah.
Web Archive,
Uh-huh.
right? So um, uh, the you can Google Wayback Machine, the
Oh yeah.
Wayback Machine, and that will bring up. And if you haven't ever used this before, it is a fun tool just to mess around with. You can go to sites and you can see what they look like a long time ago. If you actually, here's a tip for anybody who actually has been scammed. If you're involved in a scam and you're afraid that they're going to shut down the site, you can go to the Web Archive, Wayback Machine, and you can actually log or cache the page, and its history will be recorded for all time. So you can have basically a screenshot of like the scammer site. So when they pull it down, you can still go back and see it. So it
Wow.
becomes really useful. And have all these snapshots in time. Well, we were able to find snapshots of this guy's tweets. And like I said, Twitter in the early days where people were like DMing and having open private conversations. This guy posted having a garage sale at and his address, right? And then we found other posts and like, hey, are you in town? Let's meet for coffee, and put his phone number. Right. So yes, this stuff was like 10 years old, but it was a start. Right. And so it
The
just,
smile on your face. That is great.
it just turned into this whole open source intelligence like investigation. So not crypto anymore. And we were using old Twitter conversations, new Twitter conversations about people who were talking about who they thought it was, trying to draw these little connections. So, anyways, we ended up finding the phone number tying to a business in Canada. And that business was a home inspection company. And if you're a home inspector, you got to be licensed. So there has to be a national registry. So we found the registry, we found the business, we found the license, and we found the guy. So
Wow.
right now, the update is that the victim has been working with U.S. law enforcement, federal U.S. law enforcement. They have somebody in custody. They've seized assets, and it's gonna be quite a while before this guy's charged. I don't even know exactly what's happening because, like, I'm hearing it's kind of the second hand, and law enforcement won't really give you all the details. So all I know is this guy was involved in a lot of other bad stuff, and I think the crypto was kind of added in at the end, and they didn't realize that he was doing that as well. So I don't know how big this thing is, but there's lots of victims.
Wow.
I don't know how much money was seized, but people are going to get money back.
Wow.
So
Wait, you just got muted. I don't know what happened. We just lost you. Ah, say something else. Nope. Still can't hear you. Oh no. Did your headphones
I
go
got
out? Oh, there you go.
no,
We have you back.
sorry. I got a call and it connected to the headphones. Sorry.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm going to turn off the Bluetooth connection.
That's
Um,
really funny.
So anyways, I
So
sorry, I
there's
don't
a
know where I
Canadian
got
in
cut off.
jail right now because of what happened to a U.S. Victim, and because of all of
I
your
don't,
sleuth. How long did that whole sleuthing
well,
take?
I don't know if it's the actual, I don't know if that's actually that guy.
Oh, someone's in custody. Okay.
Somebody is in custody. I don't know if it's tied to that guy. I don't know if they were spoofing and using this guy's information to like do
Oh,
the stuff. Like, so that's where like some of the stuff, like this is where like I can, it's kind of like leading a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right?
yeah.
Like I can do the investigation up to a certain point, right? But I'm a civilian, right? Which is where then I hand off the stuff to law enforcement and then they can go like, oh, okay. You did 80, 90% of the investigation. You showed me exactly where the funds went, who I need to subpoena, where I can go to seize it, right? So we make it very easy for them to do their job, and we'll meet with them and explain everything if they don't understand it. And then that way the victim knows they're going to get some actual help. Because if you
Right.
just go, here's my addresses, right? And you say, well, this is how much I lost.
Here,
Like
officer,
it,
please like
even
file a report, you know?
even like you're not really going to get any local law enforcement help unless you live in Vegas. Vegas is really good actually at doing crypto investigations and have been for a long time actually. I want to say 4 years now.
Wow.
Um, excuse me. But so then we have this issue with like how do you get it into the right law enforcement's hands, and if you got to get it really into like federal law enforcement because they're the ones that are really going to do something. Local law enforcement can do things up to a certain point and they can like help freeze funds. Sometimes they can subpoena and get additional information. But as soon as that information leads to folks offshore or abroad, then it becomes federal.
And I guess
And
the feds
so
can't
they
just
got to
take every
pass it.
single one of these cases, right? They have to be like, if it's over a certain threshold, it's our jurisdiction. Otherwise, sorry, not our problem. Like 10 grand, is the Fed, are the feds really going to care about that? Or are they going to be like, well, but these guys are usually involved in something bigger, so we're still going to take these little cases.
You know, there's more of a push to look at the smaller cases now than there have been in the past because they believe there's a nexus, right? Because it's a lot easier to scam 1,000 people for $10,000,
Right.
right? And get, $10 million dollars than one person or 10 people for $1 million each, right? So it's, they realize now that they can't just ignore the small cases. And so they're going back and they're trying to figure out ways to data mine the information that they do have, right? But that's going to take effort and time. And people want immediacy. They got their funds stolen and they want someone to help them get it back in the next 6 to 9 months, right?
Right.
Or sooner, and right within a couple weeks. Sometimes that just can't happen, right? And like it's sad to work with victims.
Yeah.
But as I said, law enforcement's getting much better at helping, and they're the ones you really need on your side in order to get something back or some action really taken. So we're getting there. We're getting there.
So you are talking with people at a policy level as well, not just like enforcement level, but like all the way up. It sounds like you went to Sacramento, California a couple of times to talk about a bill that really affects crypto. Is that, I mean, it kind of sounds like it's all the way up and all the way down. DC, Sacramento. What are some of the things that you've spoken about and helped to inform on a policy level?
Yeah. So out of some of the work that we've been doing on the compliance side, like that you mentioned earlier, right, organically has turned into needing to stay more on top of the changing laws around money transmission, right? So if I'm doing compliance for like a Bitcoin ATM company or an OTC desk, it's much different than a custodial company, right? And the laws are constantly changing, and there's efforts at the state level to introduce new Money Transmission Modernization Act. So basically, it's a template law that all the states can use so that they can all be more on the same page. Right now, money transmission licensing is like there might as well be 50 countries essentially, like they're all slightly different, they all have different requirements. So trying to harmonize and bring the requirements to be more similar and make it streamlined. While they're doing this, they've been taking the Virtual Currencies Businesses Act which was also a template law put out by the Uniform Law Commission. And that was back in like 2013, excuse me, 2017, right? And it essentially is like a different version of the bit license that allows some sort of uniformity and structure so that businesses can have a license and know what they can do in a jurisdiction, because we're not getting it from the feds, right?
Right.
So the states are taking it upon themselves. Some of them are enacting their own completely separate bills. Some of them are enacting this, like South and North Dakota this year passed legislation that now includes a virtual currency component, and you
Wow.
need licenses there, right? So it it's vastly changing, and it's changing um, rapidly as well. So there's about 13 more states that are looking to add the Money Transmission Modernization Act within the next 12 to 18 months. Some of them are going to have the virtual currency component, and some of them may not. And it
Is
might
that
get
going to mean
through.
like we're
And
not going to have Bitcoin ATMs in all 50 states or anytime soon? Or does that mean?
so, so yeah, let's get to the kiosk bill specifically. So the kiosk bill in California said said three main things. The three things were you can't sell more than $1,000 a day to a person. You
Okay.
can't charge more than 2% per transaction,
Okay.
and all the machines have to be two-way. So you have to be able to buy and sell, which that doesn't sound that big of a deal, but for a operator to now have to switch out all of their machines will cost them a significant amount of money,
Right.
right? They either have to buy a whole new machine because the machines cannot be retrofitted, or they have to retrofit the machine. And then the second thing is on the kiosks is that there's the cash handling component of the kiosk, right? So if you're buying Bitcoin, you're going up to the machine and you're putting dollars. That's fine. No big deal. But the bill collect, you have to understand how the machine works. So the bill collectors, sometimes the machines use one bill collector and they can recycle. So if I put money in and then you come and you're standing in line behind me and then you want to sell Bitcoin to the machine, it will spit dollars out of the
Right.
same thing, same holder, bill collector. A lot of machines have two
Ah,
separate things.
right.
So money in stays segregated from the money going out, which means every operator would have to have additional cash sitting inside of a machine just waiting for someone to withdraw,
Right.
when only about 10% of all like activity at kiosks is sell. So
Oh,
why would you be forcing these companies who don't need these, right? Other than you're saying that it's access
right.
for people, but but they're getting confused with what is access. Access. This is not access to their own money, like a regular ATM at a casino, right? Like I can go and pull $1,000 out of an ATM at a casino, right? And like that's not a big deal. And they charge and they're capped because it's my money that I'm accessing, right? But a Bitcoin transaction is a buy and a sell, right? So it is not access to your own capital. And therefore, like you don't restrict currency exchangers at the kiosk, like little things in the airports and
Right.
how much they can charge on those. Why are you doing the same thing? Why are you implementing these drastic rules on the Bitcoin ATM operators,
Right.
right? And it feels like a specific attack
Yeah.
on them because because people get scammed. I mean, part of the investigation work we do is, oh, I was told that I had a virus on my computer, and so I was talking to this guy, and then they got me on the phone and they said I had to pull out all my money and I had to go take it over here and put it in this Bitcoin ATM. And these guys are on the phone with them the entire time, like
Oh my
6 hours. Like they don't let them get off the phone. They're on the phone when they go into the bank branch to withdraw money, right? So all it takes is some older person to lose a bunch of money who's connected to a politician to be like, this needs to end. That's how laws happen.
Right. Yeah.
Like people don't want to be like, oh, that's not really how it happens. Yeah, that's actually
No,
sometimes that's how it happens.
I moved to New York and I kept seeing in every bar. I used to own a bar in Seattle, Washington. And it's like I see in every bar this sign that like we did not all have anything remotely like this in our, and it was like how to stop choking, do CPR. Here's what the Heimlich is. And I'm like, what rich person's kid choked in a bar? Because I've never seen this before. Like firearms, sure, can't have them, whatever. I've been to Texas, I get it. But like choking, like somebody famous had a kid who choked, and now we have so much ample signage and like that people just ignore. But it only took like having never seen it before for me to be like, there's got to be some weird, yeah, you're right, we need some rich person to lose a bunch of money who's connected to a politician. Like why couldn't Michael Turpin have been more closely connected to politicians when he lost all that money with AT&T, right? Why? But no, we're gonna have to try again.
Yeah, too bad he didn't have telecom lobbyists in his pocket,
Right.
right?
No, I bet he has them now.
Um, so right, so there's this connection kind of between like the investigations, right, and then the the policy and legislative work because it affects the consumer directly, right? Like this, imagine like no Bitcoin ATM operator can operate on 2% margins.
Right.
It's
Sorry.
impossible. It's impossible. Like the exchange is charging them a 0.5%, right,
Right.
to acquire their Bitcoin. They have to pay for the rent for the place where the machine is being stored, right? Hardware, maintenance, cash handling and pickup, insurance, like all these things. There's a laundry list
Yeah.
of
A lot
things.
more than a 1.5% spread in there. That's just not going to happen. It's not possible.
Impossible. So I've given them numbers. I've talked to them. So I even went on, it was March 29th. There's a video I think we posted on our YouTube channel. It's only like 2 minutes long because that's all the time they give you to testify. But I
Yeah.
testified at the Senate Banking and Finance hearing or committee hearing meeting
Oh,
against this kiosk bill, which is Senate Bill 401, I believe. And I've talked to them numerous times. I put in some requests on what I think the numbers should be, and I'm hoping that we'll get some amendments. It's past appropriations. It's on its way into the assembly in California. This is not a licensing bill. Like it doesn't mean you need to get a license. It's just going to put these like restrictions, right, on these operators. So I'm hoping even if it gets through, and here's the problem, right? Normal bills, there's thousands of bills,
yeah.
right? They don't ever, most of them don't make it through, except this bill, which is being authored by the pro tem. So she's like the speaker of the house for the state. It's like the governor and then her.
Okay.
Well, 50% of her bills get passed on both
Just she's
sides.
her.
And
Yeah.
because she's top of the food chain, right? The governor can still veto it, and he has passed or vetoed a lot of crypto bills in the past. So even if this one gets through, there's a chance that it won't make it, but there's a very good chance that it gets through in some capacity.
Oh my God.
So we're just trying to make it so that it doesn't completely restrict it so that these companies leave the state altogether and set a precedence for other states, right?
Right.
And
And
to
and
which you just
ill-informed
destroy.
precedents that just like gets rid of the entire industry, basically. Or means that
Yeah,
only like the Walmart of ATMs can ever survive because they can wholesale that stuff. And so now you get rid of all small business that's related to crypto.
right. Or force everybody to go online to OTC exchanges like Coinbase, right?
Right.
So
Where
like
they
who
definitely get charged a lot more than 2%, turns out, but those guys aren't capped yet. So
Yeah, and well, here's the thing that this is the problem that they're seeing is they're like, well, why would I want to go to a Bitcoin ATM and get charged 15% when I could go online and use Coinbase and get charged 1.5, 2, 3, 4%?
right.
Why would I even do that? I'm like, well, I gotta wait 3 days if I go with Coinbase. But if
And
I
then I
do
have
it,
to transfer it to my bank. And if my bank doesn't want to take it, they can just freeze all my funds anyway and say that was a crypto related transaction. And that's a risk some people run.
yeah, and but some people need it immediately,
Yeah.
right? And I get it. There's fraud. But there's fraud in every financial industry. It doesn't matter.
Right.
So like
Yeah.
don't you can't signal out like one little sliver and say this is all bad,
Yeah.
right? So this is some of the fun stuff I get to do.
That is fun stuff. Well, okay, so So as outside of just waiting to see what legislation comes through and if it's going to completely affect our ability to access, Bitcoin and get our money quickly or not. If I was to get scammed tomorrow, or maybe I have been scammed and I need to talk to you offline about that. I don't know, but how do I like reach you? What's the process? I mean, I guess you're not just like hopping on Zoom calls just here and there willy-nilly anymore, but like, do you have can I just like tweet you and it'll be like in the Twitterverse forever in the Wayback Machine? They'll be like, oh, Monica tweeted about that. Like, how do I reach out to you if I'm just a consumer that has an issue?
So fortunately now we have a very streamlined intake process. So you can go to coinstructive.com and there's an investigations page, or even from the home page, you can open a case and that will take you to a survey and it'll ask you a bunch of questions. So it gives us the background of your case. You tell us like when it happened, how much you lost of your original funds, right? Because sometimes there's a disconnect between what I saw in the fake exchange, right, and how much my balance was. I had I had 1.2 million, and I started with 60 grand. Okay, well, you didn't lose 1.2 million. I'm sorry to tell you, you only really lost 60 grand, and you lost it like 2 months ago, and
Yeah,
all you were seeing was numbers on a screen,
right.
and they're like. It's like you can hear it, and like
Yeah,
the
like
steam is
wait.
like coming out of their ears, like their mind is breaking. Like they didn't understand that it was fake. And I'm like, yeah, here's what happened. And
Yeah,
then, right. So you got to use a lot. So you get why we do it this way, right? Why send people to the website first? Because if we have to spend the time on the intake call to get all that information, then we need to start charging people because it
right.
takes up a lot of time. But we get free intake calls, 15-minute free intake call, because we already are able to look at your information and kind of uh, assess the situation and then get more information and talk to you about our processes, how
Yeah,
we do things. And even on the website, there's like step one, this is how we do it. Step two, this is what to expect next. Step three, we want to be very like, there's three things that I always stress in investigations. It's empathy, sincerity, and transparency. Because what people don't like, well, I, the victims know this, but when you're talking to somebody who is not a victim or outside like you, or even an investigator who's doing an intake call. What we don't realize necessarily at the time is that this is not just a financial crime, right? Yes, that's the press. That's what started it, but this is now turned into it physically impacting this person because they're unable to eat well and they're unable to sleep well because it's affecting their being their all aspects of their life. They can't focus on work, so now that's affect their relationships at home, maybe their children or their spouse, because they haven't even told their spouse how much
I
they
was gonna
lost yet,
say, yeah,
right? Like there's all these other things that it's not just, oh well, how much money did you lose, right? And I think a lot of times when you're dealing with law enforcement, right, because they're so overworked and usually underpaid, that they have a stack of cases they're already working on, that you kind of lose this empathy,
yeah,
and sometimes you lose that like sympathy aspect of like the case. And so a lot of time, like you got to remember, some of these people are like on the verge of suicide sometimes, right? I've lost my entire life savings. I'm 80 years old. I don't know what am I, how am I going to come back from this? I'm 80. Like, I don't, what do you tell that guy?
yeah,
Like, okay, we're going to help you, right? And sometimes that 15 minutes turns into an hour,
yeah.
right? But,
So you're sort
but
of a
like
crisis counselor as well, and somewhat like a doctor with good
sometimes,
bedside manner instead of with bad bedside
yeah,
manner. Yeah,
yeah, but you have to do that because there's the thing is about all the transparency that we've been doing has actually kind of negatively impacted us in a way that you wouldn't expect, because now there's a ton of recovery scams,
yeah.
right? They use our same methods.
Oh my God.
We know that they've like come in, like done intake calls to try to get information from us, right?
Oh my
Like
God.
like someone go, I think this guy was a scammer trying to find out how we did things, like. And and so we're working with some federal agencies right now on recovery scams because
Good.
they know it's a problem. So
Oh my God.
So,
All the way back to
right.
like full circle back to your own scams of your own services. That's crazy.
So sometimes by the time they come to us, right, they've already been scammed twice. So, and we've even had people tell us, well, I'm talking to this other company, I'm talking to you. And they tell them, well, yeah, well, we're going to get you the money back. And we tell them, like, well, here's how it really works. Like, you
Right.
got to find it and you got to work with law enforcement and they got to freeze and seize. And they're like, no, but these guys tell me this, that they can find it and it's in a wallet and then they can get it back. And they're going to charge me 15 grand. And I'm like, okay, we'll talk to you in 6 months when you got scammed again. Like, can
Yeah,
you come back?
exactly. That's not how it
And
works. There's no reverse button, even though you can find the wallet. We can't hit the reverse button and send it back to you because it's the right thing to do. We can't do it.
right. And
Gosh.
the other problem is when the recovery scams is that the exchanges, the services who are selling crypto, when someone does get scammed and they go to the exchange or they go to the service and they say, here's what happened, and the service goes, it's yours. You took it out of our platform and sent it to somebody. That's not our fault.
Right.
It's under your own control. Good luck. Sorry. But then you got to remember, we're humans.
Right.
Like if someone tells you I can't help you, we have this thing called the internet.
Right.
Uh,
You're gonna go find somebody who says they can. And guess what? The scammers will be
you're
sitting there saying we can.
exactly it,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
so that's what happens. They help themselves and they help themselves in a wrong way, and then they get
Love
scammed
that.
again. If these platforms would just say, look, here's three good companies. We
Yeah.
don't recommend any one of them over the other. Go do your own research, but they're legit and they're not
Yeah.
going to
And
scam
make
you.
sure you really type in the thing. Don't like their URL. Don't, it's not coinstructive.net. It's not coinstructive.co. It's not coinstructive.rr.cc. Something else. It's just coinstructive.com. Write it in properly. That's where you'll find it. I mean, otherwise, yeah, careful. Careful. Don't just Google it and be like the first coinstructive that comes up. No, not
I
a thing
hope
to
it's
do.
I hope
I
the
hope,
SEO is working.
but hey, otherwise you've got a complaint to file with Google. But you know how long it took to get smearing, what was it, spreading Santorum taken down, right? Have you ever heard that story? It took forever. Poor Senator Santorum had a hard time ever running for public office again once spreading Santorum was put up by Dan Savage. It was years that the first thing that came up with Santorum was not about the man whose name was that. So it
Hmm.
happens to the best and to the worst of us for many different reasons. But now that we've just slipped Santorum in there, I guess we'll close on that note. Is there anything else that you want to make sure consumers bear in mind when they're out there in the wild west of crypto? And or I mean, other than filling out your form, is there anything else, other resources that you've got for people to look at or not look at?
Um, that's a great question. We probably could do more on the resources front, to be
Okay,
honest.
let's do a part
Um,
two on resources. That would be really cool.
yeah, I think though, like the big thing is if it sounds too good to be true, if you're being promised like returns that sound really, really good, they're probably too good to be true, and that's the problem. Also, if you've never met the person that you're sending funds to, right, and they tell you that they're gonna come visit eventually, it's
They're not
never
going to
gonna
come visit.
happen, right?
Yeah,
So we like the typologies, like, and there are actually, let me rephrase, we do have a bunch of resources on YouTube. We have a bunch of short videos about the different scam typologies,
great.
and with examples and stuff. So one of my past senior investigators and my case manager interviewing and talking about what happens with victims, like what type of the cases and like what it looks like and what to expect and how to identify.
I love
So
that. I love that.
so
So people can
if you
go,
yeah, if you think you're involved in something and you're not sure exactly what's going on, but something doesn't feel right, like trust your instincts, right?
yeah,
Like love can be a really hard to overpower, um, that instinct. But if there's something in the back of your head that just is like something might not be right here, like find out, right? Because a lot of times the only way we've been able to convince people that like the person that they're romantically involved in is scamming them is that we can show them the wallet address that they've been sending funds to, and that other people are also sending funds to it.
right. And that's like,
And
oh my God, he's cheating on me. It's like,
yeah, and
right.
then it
Financial
changes the
infidelity.
whole
Yeah.
it changes the whole perspective. So
If
you
only
really
we
have
could
to
do the same with, much more personal matters. Wouldn't that be great? Like, how many funds have been sent there? Well, let's find out. The
Yeah,
blockchain does bring a lot of transparency to things that other private investigators would probably find envious for them. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's been a total pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much, Chris. It's been
Thanks
great.
for having me, Monica.
We have got to come back and do a part 2 on resources for this stuff and the different types of scams, because that just sounds like a fun one anyway. But yeah, I'm glad people can at least go to your YouTube. Is it just CoinStructive YouTube?
Yeah, it's our CoinStructive YouTube channel.
All right. That sounds wonderful. Well, thank you again for joining us, Chris Groshong from CoinStructive. It's been a pleasure. And this is Monica Profit signing off from The Profit Show. I'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks a lot, you guys.